It happened at 11:40 on a Tuesday night, the kind of hour when the world is supposed to be still. I had just finished a 12-hour shift at the hospital, still wearing scrubs that smelled like antiseptic and exhaustion, when I pulled into my driveway and noticed the lights on inside my house. I had not left any lights on. I sat in the car for a full minute, hands on the wheel, staring at the warm glow leaking through the curtains I had picked out myself, hung myself, paid for myself. My chest tightened the way it does before something bad gets confirmed. I almost convinced myself I was imagining things. Then I saw the silver pickup truck parked along the curb, and I stopped imagining anything. I knew that truck. I had spent 4 years learning to hate the sound of it pulling into a driveway. I got out slowly, key already in my hand, and walked to the front door. It was unlocked. Not broken, not forced. Unlocked. Like whoever was inside believed they had every right to be there. I pushed it open. My mother-in-law was sitting at my kitchen table. She did not flinch when I walked in. She just looked up from the papers spread in front of her and said, "Diana, we need to talk." Her name was Maureen, and she had never once, in the 4 years I was married to her son, spoken to me like I was a full person. I was always an accessory to her, a placeholder in her son's life until something better came along. When Marcus and I divorced 8 months ago, I assumed she would exit my life the same way he did, quietly, with a few cruel parting words and a lot of pretending none of it was his fault. I was wrong about the quiet part. I looked around the room. Her son Todd was leaning against my kitchen counter, arms crossed, wearing that particular smirk he saved for moments when he thought he had already won something. "How did you get in?" I asked. Maureen smiled like I had asked something sweet and naive. Marcus still had a key. He thought it was fine to let us in, given the circumstances. "What circumstances?" I said. It was not a question. I already knew this was not going to be a conversation. She folded her hands over the papers on the table. "The house, Diana. We need to talk about the house. I had bought the house 14 months ago. Single buyer, single name on the deed, single set of mortgage payments that came out of my account every month without fail. I had saved for 6 years to do it, through nursing school, through a marriage that slowly dismantled me, through a divorce that cost more than money. The down payment was mine. The credit was mine. The closing costs were mine. I had sat at that settlement table alone because Marcus refused to show up, and I had signed every document with a steady hand because I was finally doing something that no one could take back. I walked to the table and placed my hands flat on the surface across from Maureen. "There is nothing to talk about," I said. "This is my house." Todd laughed once, short and dry. "That's the thing," he said. "It might not be as yours as you think." Maureen slid one of the papers toward me. I looked at it without picking it up. It was a document I did not recognize at first. Dense legal formatting. Typed lines. 2 signatures at the bottom. My eyes went to the name on the right signature line. Diana Reyes. My name. Not my signature. "What is this?" I said slowly. "A quit-claim deed," Maureen said, her voice smooth and practiced. "You signed over a partial interest in the property to Marcus before the divorce was finalized. It's all there. Date, notary stamp, everything." I picked up the paper. My hands were steady. 8 years of nursing will do that for you. You learn very quickly not to let your hands show what your body is doing internally. I looked at the signature. I knew my own handwriting. I had stared at it on thousands of patient charts, on countless documents, on 6 years of checks written to savings accounts building toward this exact house. The signature on that paper was close. It was practiced and deliberate, and it was not mine. "I never signed this," I said. Maureen shrugged like I had made a mild observation about the weather. "The notary confirmed it. The county recorder's office has it on file. These things have a way of coming out, Diana, when someone digs far enough." Todd pushed off the counter and moved toward the hallway, and I realized with a slow, nauseating clarity that he had already been walking around my house, not standing in my kitchen, waiting, walking through my rooms, looking at my things, calculating. "Marcus deserves something from this marriage," Maureen said. "He gave you the best years of his life." I almost laughed at that. Marcus had given me 4 years of being told I was too sensitive, too focused on work, too attached to money that was technically ours but functionally mine. He had given me a wedding that his mother planned, a house I was not allowed to buy because he preferred renting, and a divorce that he filed the month after I closed on this property. He gave me nothing, I said. And neither did you. Her expression hardened. You would not even have known about this neighborhood if I hadn't mentioned it. We introduced you to the realtor. Marcus drove you to every open house. This family was involved in every step. Driving me somewhere is not a down payment, I said. Todd reappeared in the hallway. Look. Nobody wants this to get ugly. Mom just wants to make sure the family is protected. If you're willing to sit down and work out an arrangement, maybe Marcus gets a room here while he gets back on his feet. Maybe you. No, I said. Silence. No, I said again, quieter this time, because I wanted them to hear it clearly in both registers. Maureen stood up. She was not a tall woman, but she had a way of occupying space that felt larger than her body. You can fight this if you want to, she said. But that document is filed. It is legal, and if you force us to go through the courts, things are going to get very expensive and very public for you. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I gathered the papers from the table, tapped them against the surface to straighten them, and set them down again in front of her. Get out of my house, I said. Todd started to say something. I turned to him. Get out. Maureen picked up the papers slowly, folding them with deliberate precision. She looked at me the way she always had, like I was a problem she had not yet found the right solution for. We'll be in touch, she said. They left. I heard the front door close, heard the truck engine turn over outside, heard it pull away. Then I stood in the middle of my kitchen and did not move for a very long time. The house was quiet. My house. The refrigerator hummed. The clock above the stove read 12:03 a.m. My scrubs still smelled like the hospital. Somewhere in the ceiling, a smoke detector blinked its small red light in the dark. I sat down at the table where Maureen had been sitting and opened my laptop. I did not sleep that night. I had met Rachel 3 years ago on a night shift in the ICU. She was a charge nurse, calm under pressure, quick to laugh between codes, and the kind of person who remembered everything she was ever told. By the time Marcus and I signed the divorce papers, she knew more about my marriage than most people I had known for a decade. I called her at 6 a.m. They were inside your house, she said. Not a question. Marcus had a key I forgot to take back. Deanna, I know. She was quiet for a moment. Okay. What did the document look like? Was there an actual notary stamp? I described it as precisely as I could. I had looked at it closely before I put them out. The formatting, the language, the signature, the embossed seal. Rachel was typing something. I could hear the keys. I'm looking up quitclaim deed fraud in Ohio right now. Okay. So this is a real thing that happens. It's called deed theft and it is a crime. You need to call the county recorder's office when they open and ask if there's anything filed on your property outside of your original purchase. It's 6 a.m, so get ready to call at 8. She paused. Also change your locks today. Not tomorrow. Today. I already had a locksmith's number pulled up on my phone. By 8:15 that morning, I was on hold with the Franklin County Recorder's office. By 8:40, I was speaking to a woman named Deb, who put me on hold twice and came back sounding carefully neutral in the way that government employees do when they have found something they were not expecting. Miss Reyes, there is a quitclaim deed filed on your property dated 4 months ago. It shows a partial transfer of interest to Marcus Allen Briggs. I pressed the phone against my ear. I did not sign that document. A pause. You may want to contact an attorney. I had already opened a new tab. Her name was Patricia Lowe, and she had spent 15 years handling real estate litigation. Her office was downtown, small and organized, the kind of place where every file had a label and every label had a date. She wore reading glasses on a chain around her neck and looked at the documents I brought her with the focused calm of someone who had seen variations of this before. This is deed fraud, she said, setting the papers down. The notary stamp is real, which means someone brought a document to a notary and signed your name in front of them. That is identity fraud. That is also forgery. Those are 2 separate criminal matters in addition to the civil one. How do I fix it? I asked. We file a quiet title action to clear the fraudulent claim from your deed. We simultaneously report the forgery to the county prosecutor. And we document everything. She looked at me over her glasses. Do you have proof of purchase? Mortgage statements? Your original closing documents? I had brought a folder. Everything organized, labeled, dated. Down payment wire transfer. Mortgage approval. Closing disclosure. Settlement statement. Every document with my name alone, my signature alone, my account alone. She looked through the folder and nodded. This is excellent. You did this on your own? I'm a nurse, I said. We document. She almost smiled. Good. Because they're going to argue that Marcus was involved in the purchase. They're going to say he contributed emotionally, logistically, whatever language they can find. None of that creates legal ownership without a signed instrument. And the signed instrument they have is a forgery. I asked her the question I had been sitting with since 11:40 the night before. Is there any way they actually win this? She took off her reading glasses and looked at me directly. Not with what you've brought me. No. The messages started 3 days later. First from Marcus, who texted a single line. You need to stop making this into something it isn't. Then from Maureen, who called twice and left voicemails that were long and tearful in the opening and sharp-edged by the end. I saved both without responding. Then Todd posted something on Facebook that his girlfriend screenshotted and sent to a mutual friend who sent it to me. A long paragraph about how some people use marriage to take advantage of good families and then cut everyone out when they no longer needed them. He did not name me. He did not need to. My phone started buzzing with messages from people I had not spoken to in years. Old friends of Marcus, a cousin I had met twice at holidays, someone from his church. All of them phrased their messages like concern. None of them had called during the years when I was working doubles to cover our rent because Marcus changed jobs 4 times in 18 months. I read them all once, and then put my phone face down on the kitchen counter. I had learned in the ICU that you could not manage a crisis and absorb feedback at the same time. You had to pick one. I picked the crisis. That week, I drove to the county recorder's office in person and spoke to Deb, who turned out to be a small, efficient woman who pulled my file with the expression of someone who had already decided which side of this she was on. She walked me through the fraudulent filing line by line, the date it was submitted, the name of the notary, the address of the notary's office, which turned out to be a UPS store location in the suburb where Maureen lived. I photographed every page. Patricia filed the quiet title action the following Monday. She also submitted a formal complaint to the county prosecutor's office. 2 days after that, she called me at work between patients. The notary has been contacted, she said. She's cooperating. She confirmed that the person who brought the document identified herself as you. She did not verify identity correctly, which is its own problem for her, but the important thing is she is confirming the signature was not yours. I stepped into the supply room and closed the door. So what happens now? I asked. The prosecutor's office is opening an investigation. That means Marcus and potentially Maureen and Todd are looking at criminal exposure, forgery, identity fraud, attempted property theft. These are felonies, Diana. The supply room was cold, fluorescent light, shelves of wound care materials on both sides. I never wanted to put anyone in prison, I said. I know, Patricia said, but what you want doesn't change what they did. Marcus called that evening. I answered because Patricia had told me to document any contact they made. You went to the prosecutor, he said. Not an accusation, just flat, like he was noting a weather update. You forged my signature, I said. A long pause. My mother thought. I don't care what your mother thought. Diana. His voice shifted into the tone I used to spend enormous energy trying to soften. Patient, condescending, the voice of a man explaining something obvious to someone slow. You got the house. You got everything. You couldn't just let her have something to feel okay about? I stayed very still. You forged my name on a legal document. Your mother trespassed in my home. Your brother walked through my rooms like he was taking inventory. And you're asking me what I could have given to make her feel okay. He did not say anything. We're done talking, I said. I hung up and added the call to the log I was keeping. Time, duration, summary. The same format I used for patient notes. Objective, specific, Without editorializing, I was not angry anymore. I had moved past anger somewhere around day 3 and landed somewhere colder and more useful. Focus. The kind that does not need an audience. Rachel came over that Friday with takeout and wine and the specific energy of someone who has decided you are not going to be alone with your thoughts tonight. We sat on my living room floor, boxes of Thai food open between us, and she made me tell her the whole story from the beginning. "The notary is cooperating," she said when I finished. "Yes. And Patricia says you have everything you need." "Yes." She pointed her chopsticks at me. "Then why do you still look like someone is standing on your chest?" I thought about it honestly. "Because I keep waiting for the thing I did wrong to show up." Rachel set down her food. "What do you mean?" "I keep going over it. The year I gave Marcus a joint account access when we were still together. The time I let Maureen handle the caterers for the wedding because she said she had contacts. Every time I said yes because it was easier than the conversation. I keep looking for the place where I handed them the material." "Diana," Rachel said, "you trusted people you were supposed to be able to trust. That is not the same as doing something wrong." I looked at the room, my furniture, my walls, painted the color I chose without consulting anyone. My diploma in a frame above the bookshelf. 8 years of school and clinical hours and board exams, every one of them mine. "I know," I said. "I just keep looking anyway." Rachel picked up her wine. "That's not a flaw. That's what conscientious people do. But at some point you have to let the paperwork be right and let yourself be right." I clinked my glass against hers. We talked until midnight, and not about Marcus or Maureen or any of it. We talked about a trip she wanted to take, a patient I had been worried about, a book I had been trying to finish for 3 months. Normal things. The kind of conversation that reminded me my life was larger than this particular fight. When she left, I locked the door, new deadbolt clicking into place, and stood in the quiet for a moment. The house felt different than it had 2 weeks ago. Not lighter exactly, more mine, like it had been tested and had held. The quiet title action was granted 6 weeks after Patricia filed it. A circuit court judge reviewed the evidence, reviewed the notary's statement, reviewed my original purchase documents, and issued an order voiding the fraudulent deed and reaffirming sole ownership in my name. Patricia called me with the news on a Thursday morning while I was in the parking garage at the hospital, halfway out of my car. "It's done," she said. "Your deed is clean. The fraudulent filing has been expunged from the record." I sat back down in the driver's seat. "The prosecutor's investigation is still ongoing," she added. "That timeline is separate, but for purposes of your property, you are fully protected." I thanked her. I said it 3 times, maybe 4, and she laughed and said once was plenty. When I hung up, I sat there for a few minutes not doing anything. The parking garage was gray and echoey and smelled like motor oil, not a meaningful setting. But meaning has a way of finding you regardless of where you are. I thought about the night I closed on the house. I had driven there alone, parked in front of it for 10 minutes before going inside the title company. The realtor had asked if anyone was joining me, and I had said no, and felt the word land strange, like it was both ordinary and significant at the same time. Then I had sat at the table and signed my name over and over on documents that said in clear, unambiguous language that this belonged to me. I had cried on the drive home. Not from sadness. From the specific relief of something finally being exactly what it was supposed to be. I felt something close to that now. Maureen called twice the week after the ruling. I did not answer. She left one voicemail, short this time, none of the earlier theatrical grief. Her voice was flat and careful, and sounded like someone who had recently spoken to an attorney of her own. "Diana," she said, "I think we both handled this badly. I hope we can find a way to move forward that doesn't have to involve all of this legal back and forth. For everyone's sake." I listened to it once, saved it, and did not call back. Todd sent a text that said only, "You should have just been reasonable." I added it to the document file and did not respond to that either. Marcus did not contact me again. Rachel texted me the morning after the ruling. "So? What's the update?" I sent back 2 words. "It's mine." She sent back 6. "It was always yours. Congrats, Di." 3 weeks later, a Saturday, I was painting the hallway. I had been meaning to do it since I moved in. a warm white to replace the rental beige that had come with the house. I had a podcast playing, a roller in my hand, drop cloth taped along the baseboards. My phone rang, a number I did not recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. Then I answered. It was a woman named Janelle, a paralegal from a legal aid organization that handled housing cases. She said Patricia had referred her, said I might be willing to speak with someone. About what? I asked. Deed fraud, she said. Specifically, cases involving recently divorced women who own property. We're seeing more of these. Someone forged a document, tried to claim a partial interest, usually a former spouse or their family. We're building a resource guide for attorneys and we're looking for people willing to share their experience. I lowered the roller. You want me to share my story? Only if you're comfortable, she said. Anonymously or not, your choice. What you went through, how you documented it, how the case resolved. It might help someone else who doesn't know where to start. I stood in the middle of my half-painted hallway and thought about the folder I had brought to Patricia's office. Labeled, dated, organized. The year I had spent being methodical about my life, because no one else was going to be methodical for me. The night I came home to find someone sitting at my kitchen table acting like it was theirs. Yes, I said, I'll talk to you. I met with Janelle 2 Tuesdays later at a coffee shop downtown. She was in her early 40s, thorough and unhurried, and she took notes the way I liked people to take notes, specifics, not impressions. I told her everything. The document Maureen slid across my table. The notary at the UPS store. The county recorder's file. Patricia's quiet title action. The way I had organized every piece of evidence because documentation was the only thing I knew how to do when I did not know what else to do. Janelle stopped writing at one point and looked up. How did you know to keep records? Most people in your situation don't think to do that until it's too late. I considered it. When you work with patients, I said, you learn that what you remember and what actually happened are two different things. The chart is the truth. Everything else is subject to revision. She wrote that down. Deed theft disproportionately affects women who own property without a co-borrower, she said after a moment. Especially recently divorced women. There's a specific assumption, usually from the former spouse's family, that a woman alone can't have acquired the asset legitimately. They look for angles. Sometimes they find one. Sometimes they manufacture one. I nodded. She kept saying Marcus had contributed, driving me to open houses. His mother mentioning the neighborhood. Like proximity was ownership. And it isn't. And it isn't, I agreed. We talked for 90 minutes. When I left, the afternoon light was sharp and cold, that particular November light that makes everything look overexposed. I walked to my car thinking about the word Janelle had used, disproportionately. I thought about all the versions of women she was describing. Women who had worked and saved and organized and shown up alone at settlement tables and signed their names on their own. Women who came home to lights on in houses that belonged to them. I drove home, unlocked the new deadbolt, and went back to painting the hallway. The case against Marcus and Maureen moved forward that winter. I was not the one driving it. The prosecutor's office was. My job was to respond to requests and let Patricia handle the rest. In December, I got a letter from the county confirming that a formal charge of forgery had been filed, a second charge of criminal simulation. The investigation was ongoing. I read the letter twice, folded it, and put it in the file. That same week, I finished painting the hallway and started on the bedroom. I bought a new rug for the living room, the kind I had been looking at online for months and kept not buying for reasons I could no longer identify. I put a bird feeder up outside the kitchen window and spent approximately 20 minutes one morning watching a cardinal work it over before my shift. Rachel texted a photo of her cat wearing a holiday sweater. I sent back a photo of the cardinal. She replied, "You're healing." I laughed out loud in my empty kitchen. One Sunday in January, there was a knock at the door. 2 soft knocks, polite, uncertain. Not the kind that shook the frame or came with voices. I looked through the peephole. My mother-in-law was standing on my front step. No Todd, no Marcus, just her, holding her purse the way she always did, pressed tight against her chest like a shield. I opened the door partway. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but in the way people look when something has been taken out of them. She met my eyes and then looked down. "Diana," she said. Her voice had none of the performance from before. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did. I waited. What I asked Marcus to do, she corrected. Like that made it different. I thought. She stopped. I thought you had taken something from our family when you and Marcus split. I thought the house was part of it. I know that's not how it works. I know that now. The cold air moved between us. Down the street, a neighbor was loading groceries from a car. Why are you here? I asked. Because my attorney told me to stay away from you, and I'm doing the opposite, she said. Because I needed to say it to your face. I studied her for a moment. The woman who had sat at my kitchen table like she owned it. The woman who had, at some point, handed a document to a notary and allowed someone to sign my name. I did not feel anger. I had not felt anger in a while. What I felt was something simpler. Clarity. I appreciate you saying it, I said. But an apology doesn't undo what was filed. The prosecutor is going to do what the prosecutor does. And that's not mine to stop. She nodded, eyes still down. I know. And this door, I said, is mine. If you come back, I need it to be for a reason that has nothing to do with Marcus or the house or any of this. If that reason ever exists, I'll answer. If it doesn't, I need you to respect that. She looked up then. Something moved across her face that might have been relief, or might have been grief, or might have been the specific exhaustion of a person who has finally stopped fighting something they were never going to win. Okay, she said. She left. I watched her car pull away, and then I closed the door and locked it. I went back to the kitchen, poured the coffee that had been sitting waiting for me, and stood at the window. The bird feeder was empty. I made a note to refill it. My phone buzzed. Rachel. Still on for dinner Thursday? I typed back, yes, you're picking the place, I'm picking the wine. She sent back a series of emojis I chose to interpret as agreement. I sat at the table, coffee warming my hands, and looked around the room, cabinets I had repainted in the spring. A print on the wall I had found at a market on a weekend trip with Rachel. A plant on the windowsill that had taken 6 months to stop dying, and was now, inexplicably, thriving. Every object in the room was a small decision I had made without asking anyone's permission. Not out of stubbornness, not out of some need to prove a point. Just because this was mine, and I was allowed to make it exactly what I wanted it to be. The house was quiet. My house. I drank my coffee and let the quiet hold. Later that week, I submitted my account to Janelle for the resource guide. I wrote it the same way I wrote patient notes, clear, specific, without editorializing, what happened, when it happened, what I did about it, what the result was. At the end, she asked me to include a final note, something another woman in the same situation might need to hear. I sat with that for a day before I wrote it. Keep every document. The date you saved for. The wire transfer. The settlement statement with your name printed clean at the top. Not because you're expecting to need it, because the record of what you built is also the proof of who you are. And if someone tries to rewrite that record, you will have the truth right there in your own handwriting, dated and filed and waiting. You don't have to be loud about any of it. You just have to be right. I submitted it, closed my laptop, and went to refill the bird feeder. The cardinal was back within 20 minutes, working at the seeds with that particular focused indifference birds have, unbothered by anything that wasn't directly in front of it. I stood at the window and watched until the light changed.